In this video, I'm going to talk about the different patterns of microblading, as well as the different medias you can use while practicing. I will also do a tutorial in which I show you the patterns on paper, foam pad, fake skin, and my iPad. Every artist has their own way to create the patterns, and one way is not better than the other, and over time you will develop your own unique style. Hi everyone, I'm Julia from Pigmenta Permanent Cosmetics, and welcome to my channel, the #1 place for permanent makeup education, science, and inspiration. If you're new to my channel, make sure that you click that subscribe button below, hit the bell, and turn on your notifications. Everything I mention in this video will be linked in the description box below. So let's get started. When you first get started in the permanent makeup and microblading world, everything is very confusing and very overwhelming. But I always say this, practice makes master. You have to do a lot of something to be really good and confident. Of course, eventually you will work on real people and on actual skin. But I always say this, please do not practice on your paying clients. Practice on pads or fake skin or paper until you are really confident in your skills and ability. Some people are not aware that there are different microblading patterns out there, and some people think that microblading can only be used for brows. In a separate video, I will actually show you different ways to use the microblading technique that go way beyond the eyebrows. Now, how do you determine when to use which microblading pattern? Well, you actually don't. And I'll explain why. You actually have to look at the person's hair brow pattern. And the only time you can make the determination which pattern to use on them is if they had partial or complete alopecia, which means they have sparse or no hair. So why do people have different hair patterns? Because it's genetic. So let's look at cowlicks on the head. Have you ever had to adjust a hairstyle or haircut based on your cowlicks? Exactly. It's no different with the eyebrows. Some people have one cowlick on the brows, and some people have multiple cowlicks on the brows. And these cowlicks actually determine the pattern of your eyebrows. I categorize them into 3 main pattern groups. Number 1, the transitional brow. This is where the hair grows up in the front, and then it transitions, and then it grows into the opposite direction and then downwards. Now, 75% of the population has this pattern, so this will be the main pattern you'll be working with. Number 2, the upwards brow. This is where the hair grows up and outwards. Now, this is a very common pattern in certain regions in Europe, and you can find this pattern also on some men. Number 3, the mixed brow. This is where the hair grows up in the front, and just like the transitional brow, the hair grows down on the top tier, but on the bottom tier, it continues to grow up, and then it kind of meets where the tail is. So as you can see, you have to practice all 3 patterns of the brows, so you can ensure that you cover your bases, and whoever walks through your door, you can service them. Okay, so I'm gonna begin with drawing an eyebrow. Okay, so spine first. So the spine kind of runs perpendicular or parallel, actually I should say, to this. So I'm gonna put a spine there first, and then we're gonna go one stroke, just one stroke up, another stroke up, which is a little shorter, and then the third one, which is the shortest. Okay, so this gives you like a nice transition in the front. Then you would split this off and put one stroke in between. So then you have the problem solved where you're starting to curve. And then again, just like a fan, I'm just gonna fan this out. The stroke in between the larger strokes should be actually shorter, as you can see. And then as you get closer to the ridge, go like that. Then you would turn this around, and you would do that anyway, because as you're working on a client, you are going to also turn with the client. So then one stroke here, and maybe 1, 2. And then I'm just gonna continue this. So what I like about the pencil is that you can kind of erase if you feel like, you know, as you're practicing. Okay. So now see how this has a little bit of a problem there where the dip is. So what I'm gonna do is because the transition is what is like the most important part. And you're just gonna move that like that. Okay. So this is how I would tattoo a brow. And I'm sure you already see, oh, this is kind of very different from what you usually see out there with the drawings. And that's because I draw the way I tattoo. You can see all these spaces actually do not touch. The strokes do not touch each other, and that's very important. Okay, so let me move down here. And so this is what you usually would see out there. Beautiful drawings. I mean, you know, you see something like this, and then you may see something like that. Maybe like that. Okay. Then you might see something like this. Okay, and then these get filled in. Okay, and then maybe something like this, the ends. And this is probably what you typically see. Now then you might see some merging of the strokes. Okay. Maybe something like this, so you can fill in those. And they might do something similar where you go like this to make the transition. And maybe even, they might even do something like this, shading this area. Okay, now, if you look at them both, does this one look more artistic? Sure, okay. The strokes are more like you would draw something, which is fine, but if you tattoo this in the skin, this is your problem. You're gonna have one muddy mess over here. You're gonna have pockets of blurring of color, but also, more importantly, you might see some perforated lines because your pressure cannot be consistent if you're going all different directions with your needle. So that's the problem. You have to have consistent pressure, all right? So that's not what I would naturally do, okay? I would do it like this. So let me give you an example. So let's take this pen here And if I were to tattoo, two strokes next to each other, okay? So this is in a swollen state. But then the skin, once it heals, shrinks. And then as you can see, your lines, so if your lines are too close together, like this, or like this, or like this, which looks better, and then the skin shrinks after the edema has come down, which is swelling of the skin, then you're gonna be left with kind of one color. You see, the strokes look fine here. No. So what you have to do is the strokes have to be further apart to allow for that shrinking again. See, that's fine. Let's take a look at that upwards brow, okay? Because you're gonna have a lot of people that have this kind of brow, and you're gonna have to be able to help them. Okay, so you really don't need a ridge there because, you know, all the hairs grow up because they're going all like this, okay? So what you want to do is you want to do the 3 strokes. That's kind of like a good beginning for you, you know, to start out. Then just like a transitional brow, you might want to do a stroke here. And then you're starting to curve. So see, starting to curve. Okay, you keep going. And then you're gonna get to the arch. And just fill in a couple spots over here. Just so the transition, just so you don't have endlessly long strokes. But as you can see, again, my strokes really don't touch each other, okay? So this would be a nice way to draw and then tattoo on someone's skin. My recommendation is always to draw it first on the person. Like your strokes with one of these pencils. So let's look at another example again that you see out there with the drawings. So a fancy one. Let's do a fancy one. Okay. Okay, so I don't like this. Okay, let's look at fancy one. Fancy one would probably also start out a little bit like that, but then it probably would start out like something like this. Okay, and then you would probably do something like that, or something like this. I don't know exactly how they do it, but I might fill it in here a little bit. And, you know, maybe perhaps, again, they'll do a little bit shading. So, again, this looks much more artistic, and this looks rudimentary and chopped. But again, I want to point out why I'm doing it like this. Let me remind you of the skin swelling. But also, I want the clients to come back year after year. Okay, I want them to be my loyal clients, and these lines are easier for me to follow the next year than these. Okay, so if I did the strokes like this, what's going to wind up happening is my client, all this, because I can't follow these strokes, there's too many and too little. If I try to do this again, at one point this is going to become a solid. Like maybe 2 times they come and that's it. Whereas this I can do for like 2 decades and I still can see the strokes and follow the strokes and they still look natural. Okay. Now, last but not least, let's look at the mixed brow. Okay. So again, I have to do the spine, but I'm just gonna do the spine like halfway, you see? And again, you're gonna start out in the front like this, okay? And then you're gonna do the fan, maybe another fan, and then what you do is you just continue. Don't worry about the spacing too much. As long as it's not more than 1.5 millimeters apart, that's fine, okay? Because you can go back and do one of these. Again, try not to touch. Turn it around, and then you're gonna have to come down and offset that so you don't end up with a fishtail kind of thing. Okay, so this would be your mixed brow. All right, so that's on paper. Now you could also use a pen to do your drawings, and my favorite is the Pilot Precise V5R2. It's a roller pen, extra fine point. So the next thing I'm going to show you guys is the use of the grease pencil. I'll try to put a link below so you know where to get it. But so this one in particular I've been using for years, and it's just such a versatile tool. You can use it on the clients to draw on their eyebrows. You can use that as a practicing tool, and I'm just going to speed this up so you can see how I actually, with an X-Acto knife, or hobby knife they call it too, and I got this one at Home Depot, and what I do is I sharpen it to a nice U-shaped edge, about 0.5 millimeter thick. You can see I can make beautiful hair strokes with that. Now this is also one of my favorite ways to practice my hair strokes with the silicone skin and my grease pencil. And yes, I still practice hair strokes even though after being in the field of permanent makeup for about 27 years, it just never stops. You can always learn new things. Oh, and one thing I do want to mention in this tutorial is that my way is not the be-all and end-all way to draw hair strokes. I'm just here to share with you my years of experience in the field and what has worked for me. I guess my best advice is for those practicing hair strokes for microblading is to look at different methods and different ways to create strokes by watching different artists and just find the best way for you. My suggestions for beginners is that once you're confident with practicing your hair strokes, to draw these hair strokes on a person you are working on first. So when you are ready to actually tattoo the strokes into the skin, you can just follow those and there's no guessing game. There's nothing more stressful as to doing a procedure and then going in blindly without a guide. So once you've done about 50 people or so, you'll definitely be able to do this without drawing the strokes on first. Now moving on with the upwards brow and then the mixed brow. Oh, by the way, I am sorry about not getting the perfect focus on my camera. I promise as I'm creating more tutorials, I will find better ways and a better camera. For the purpose of not making this video too lengthy, you can slow this down by just going to playback speed to see it in real time. This is about 8 times faster. I encourage you to practice on real skin, as this is really a great way for you to get used to the feel of drawing on skin. Use your hand or arm, and actually your knee works great too. Let's try to get a pair of eyebrows done. I will do the transitional brow on the silicone skin. Now let's try another surface, which is also a great practice tool. This upward brow is done on foam cushion, aka foam skin. I get this at Michael's or I order it from Amazon. What I like about the foam skin is that it has some give, so it resembles the skin a little bit. And it also is great for practicing with microblading needles and pigment. If you're having trouble with symmetry while drawing both eyebrows, you could use a ruler or anything that will give you a straight line and use it as your guide. And lastly, my newest discovery, the iPad and the Apple Pencil. What I like about this method is that it's portable. I don't need to set up anything, and wherever I am, I can just whip it out and start drawing. Also very cool is that I can change the pen to pencil on a whim, and I can choose the color and width of my pen. This also allows for easy storage and tracking the progress of your work. I'm sure there's something compatible on the Android side. And another amazing thing that you can do with this kind of device is that you can upload a brow picture of someone and then actually learn their pattern on the template directly. Now, if you don't have access to a tablet, you could take a picture of someone's eyebrow, print it out, and then use perhaps a pencil to trace the pattern. So that can also be done. And try to do as many of these as you can, so you can be really confident once you actually work on a live person. And another example here, of someone who you could easily think is a transitional brow, but then you realize, oh no, this is more mixed brow. So you just go back, erase your strokes, and then you can continue and do another pattern. So that's it for the tutorial. Just let me know in the comments below if there are any other procedures you want me to demonstrate and do a tutorial on. I would be glad to do that. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it gave you more clarity in terms of the different patterns that are out there and the methods that you can use to practice. If you have questions or comments, or you have interest in other topics, please visit us at pigmentausa.com. You can always leave me a comment below. I would love to hear from you. I will upload a new video every week. I'll see you in the next one.